Welcome to another episode, actually, the first time of Your Best Self. I'm pretty excited today. I've got a nutritionist here with me today who's written a book, The Best Possible You. And this is the book, which I read. I met Hannah at Environment in, I think it was off Bond Street somewhere, and she kindly gave me a copy of her book. And so that's kind of how I got to know her and get into a bit more about this. So, Hannah, without further ado, welcome. How are you?
I'm very well. Thanks very much for having me. I am very well indeed. The sun is out and life is good, so I'm very happy.
So, Hannah, I'd like to start with why. I'd like to understand why you yourself went for this journey in nutrition and what it means to you.
Um, that's a good question. I mean, it's sort of like why, how, and why do you get into what you're doing? What was the first moment? What was the trigger? Um, I guess for me, there was a couple of things. I played a lot of sport when I was younger. Did ran hurdles and played a lot of hockey. And so from growing up from a young age to probably 18, a huge part of my life was training, weekends away in teams, traveling around. But the training discipline element of it was quite rigorous and a skill I suppose I learned at an early age. So the sport was big. My dad played a lot of rugby, so that's where it sort of comes from, I suppose. And then I realized that I wanted to be an actress, and the sport ran out. I sort of went to university. I guess, you either then go on to play for your country or, a bit higher standard or big club level. And I wasn't really there, or I wasn't interested enough. So I then sort of wanted to go down the acting route, and I guess the sport took a bit of a back seat, but it was always in my DNA, to be active. And I guess, fast forward, I came I got into the nutrition because I'd got into personal training, and I really loved the physical element of personal training, but it never really rocked my boat. Uh, I was never, the passion wasn't there, and I didn't really know what the passion was. And I suppose I then, from that, nutrition became an option. Someone someday said to me, "Well, what is it you do love?" And I remember saying food. And I didn't know at that time that nutrition was a job or I could make it something. So that's when I started the whole investigation and got involved with the Czech Institute, which is run by Paul Czech, and started looking at lifestyle coaching and holistic healing, and really came into the nutrition arena from a very different point of view. I always, there was a lot of green pharma going on, this for that, and just because it's not made by GlaxoSmithKline and it's made by the herbalist, it was still the same sort of allopathic approach.
Mhm.
So I was lucky in finding the Czech Institute because it allowed me to jump around courses. It allowed me to find some really, really good practitioners who were pioneers in their craft. And for really the first 10 years, it was just this enormous healing environment. Paul Check, Emma Lane, Sherry Dixon, William Wilcox, metabolic typing. It was just all consumed.
You found it a healing environment for you as well, in a sense. It was like a combination of things. It wasn't just an intellectual pursuit by that point, presumably. You're benefiting from it somehow.
I was benefiting from it. People often always ask me, like, what was wrong with you? Why did you get into it? Everyone thinks that
Is that okay?
practitioners were ill at one point, or
Okay.
overweight, or, had one leg, or whatever it is. They always think that they've got there because they were overcoming. I don't think I was overcoming anything. I think it was really a genuine love for this world I'd found. I then did need all the healing and everything I'd learned. Little did I know I was going to need it, but I was in the right place when that moment happened for sure. And I think then my love for gut health and gastro health then grew from learning from certainly Emma Lane and Omar Amin, parasitologists, and I really got into parasites, and the emotional effect they had on the human being.
Okay.
Um, so that's kind of where it all started, and the exercise and the movement took a back seat, and the food and the nutrition and the parasites and the gut health took a much bigger forefront of learning. And obviously, within that time, I set up a big clinic called Move 360 that I ran for 5 years, co-ran. Um, and that was an amazing environment for all the elements that we were looking at, the physical body, the nutritional body, the emotional and mental body. So it was an MOT one-stop shop because what we had all learned, and the place was full of Czech practitioners, corrective holistic exercise kinesiology, that you can't look through a microscope and fix the body or heal the body. It's an element. It's a lot of different elements that are all, when it all come together, all a part of the healing process. So that's where I got to, and then we closed it, and I went off solo on my own and started the gut clinic. And the gut clinic is really now all about digestive health, but the brain and the gut. So I do pick up a lot of people who haven't really looked at that connection. You know, the market or the arena is full of supplements for this and still a this for that approach. But what we're trying to do is understand how the emotional connection affects the the physical connection, you know, and looking at those boundaries within the body, because gut infections only happen when you're stressed, really, when the emotional defenses are down. So so that's where I am today, and the clinic is now on Zoom first and foremost, working internationally with clients, companies, individuals, group nutrition, um, looking predominantly at gut health. Yeah.
So we have a world in which we are constantly, and so from my perspective as a coach, what this statement is about is we have a world in which we are bombarded by different food products and different types of things with different fillers, different versions of low fat, no sugar, but it's full of, and I want to try and touch on this in terms of the gut, because traditionally people didn't suffer from the things they suffer from today, I don't think. I had IBS as a young man, and that is part of what set me on this journey, looking at things. And I remember very clearly, it was like it was 80s, and I had some book on my desk, and my boss he said, "Personal development, Tariq? We don't need that. We're British." He kind of said that. And it was the same thing with the mind. You just got on with it. And so I remember how clearly there was no understanding that there was a gut-brain axis, right? That there was no understanding that the two things are linked in any
Yeah.
sense. We had no sense that if you ate something, really it affected you mentally. We
Yeah.
we didn't make that connection. I guess maybe anthropologically speaking, as a species, we never had to make that connection because it was in the dirt, it was in the ground. We came from the ground, we were all together. You kind of mentioned that a bit in your book. You talk about, look, this is where we've come,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Uh, you know,
Well, I mean, I think that we're not as robust as we used to be. I think there are almost too many, red shiny balls hanging on the Christmas tree for us to be distracted by, and our attention spans have got shorter, um, and our integrity is less, our function is less because everything is almost been designed around us for us to for make it easy for us. And I'm certainly not a conspiracy theorist, but you know we're not moving as much as we used to. We're not even moving as much as we used to before lockdown. I mean, obesity went sky high in lockdown and still hasn't quite probably recovered.
Okay.
Because we are now all working on our computers, and I'm an example of that. I used to cycle around London, walk everywhere, go to the gym twice a day. And
Yeah.
lockdown, I sat on my behind and
Yeah.
drank a lot of gin like a lot of other people. And so you get stuck in these places. And because it was an epidemic, everyone was in it. Everyone was doing it. So we were like, well, there's comfort in numbers. No one's moving. I mean, obviously some people wrote books and some people started vegetable gardens, but they were the minority. Um, so we, in one respect, we're more addictive than we ever used to be with the wellness arena. And this might not make sense, but on the other end of the paradigm, we're as dysfunctional as we've ever been,
Okay.
if that makes sense. Because food supply is terrible. The supplement market is oversubscribed by white product labels. So people aren't focusing on the basics and the foundations because they've got a cupboard full of supplements, red int for lights, ice baths, therapy on tap, spending their money on organic sheep cotton, doing all of the things whilst getting in debt doing it and not necessarily getting any healthier. Because you can't, and again, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but the basics is where health is at. The foundation of health is having, clean water and organic food. And you can't get away from that. And you can't supplement it. And you can't bottle it up. And you can't put it into therapy.
You mentioned,
So,
yeah, I want to really go into that a bit. I was really happy to I understand the addiction and the dysfunction and that kind of juxtaposition that's kind of important. But then you moved on and you're talking about organic food. And
mm,
it's kind of critical now. I want to just talk about organic food. What is dirt? How does it grow? Why is organic food different? And why are they making us pay the earth for it? Okay. Those kinds of things. So if
mm,
I try to eat organic. I'm a prosumer. I'm as much indebted in this podcast as I am learning and understanding what this is. And so if I was speaking to you or to other people, my question is like, oh my God, please explain to me what organic really is. How is it different? And why is it so much more beneficial? Okay. Um, and just before you kick off, just this thing I heard the other day, I don't know how true it is, but that a carrot now compared to 100 years ago, was it a carrot or something? I can't remember, has uh, uh, an eighth of the nutritional value that it had 100 years ago, something like this. So I don't know if that, yeah. So what's this all about with organic?
I guess it's the definition is that the food has been grown in living matter. So there's a bed of microorganisms. An aliveness to the soil. And that takes time and it takes care and it takes man hours to create that living environment, that microorganism environment. It's why pasteurization came in because no money was being made out of raw milk, and obviously there was the bacterial element to it, which could harm people. So organic is about not counting the chemicals. If you eat a vegetable that isn't organic, it's covered, my friend, in 10 different fertilizers at least. That's what they have aeroplanes that spray the crops. So the question is only, if I had two tomatoes and I painted one tomato in three different colors of paint to represent all the sprays that go on it, and then presented the tomatoes to the public and said, which one would you like to eat? Everyone would eat the one with no paint on it. But because we can't see it, it's not there. It didn't happen, and it's 20p cheaper. So we think, what? How can it make any difference to our health? They end up being these huge endocrine disruptors. And again, there are so many elements to good health that you can argue organic or non-organic, is it going to make a difference? Maybe it doesn't, but maybe if you've had a lifetime of processed, fertilized, sprayed food, maybe your bladder issues and your UTIs or your, God forbid, bladder cancer come from that. So it's the accumulation effect that we forget, that we don't criti critically think about because we can't see it.
Okay. Okay. So organic is very important. My next question has to really do because now we're really at the crux of the matter, which is to me, I think it's about food. So as food from food, the diet controversy, man. I mean, this thing is just never ending. Everybody has a diet book. It's all different. There's keto. There's I don't know what. There's just so much stuff. It was macro, became vegan, then got plant powered. And then there's a whole bunch of people I don't, and people and a lot of people swear by what they're doing, that this is the only way. We got the Instagram recently. Hopefully, I'll meet him at some point. Eddie Abu. I do like him and
Mm,
talks a lot. And he's all about the duck eggs, right? But and you mentioned like farmers markets and things like that. I've seen where I live every single traditional butcher and fishmonger close. And you mentioned where you can to get that. So Eddie is very big on that. Eddie will get his steak directly from his local butcher. He'll get his duck's eggs from the local butcher and things like that. But then at the other end of the spectrum, I've got people like Rich Roll,
mm,
all plant powered, man. It's all
yeah,
vegan. And then they're interviewing Mike Fremont. Mike is 101 years old. He's been
mm,
vegan since he was 69, and he's cured himself of cancer. Then Dr. Schaffenberg, Public Health Institute in the US, very famous and written quite a lot, and again, completely sold on plants. So what do you do when you love a steak? Because I love a steak, it's like it makes my life interesting. I love a steak, I love a coffee, but also where I can, I want to eat as much whole grains or organic salads and fresh fruits and vegetables as I can to supplement myself. How do you do this, combining as well and keep to a good place? Because there was also this craze from Anne Diamond and Marilyn Diamond and Harvey
mm,
Diamond, I think in the 80s, uh, Fruit for Life or something, and they
yeah,
practically had us on a fruitarian diet. Like
yeah.
I would just have juices or fruits up until 12:1 every day. And I found that, and the macro diet was like dead against this. It was like, no, no matter what you do, you can't eat fruit in that way. So yeah, help me with this confusion.
I think the bottom line is what works for one may not work for another. Um,
Why is that?
I remember in metabolic typing, when I studied metabolic typing with William Wilcox, we always used to say any specific nutrient can have the same effect in a body, a different effect in another body, a good effect in another body, and the worst effect in another. And that's really kind of what I sort of go by. So I don't care if you're vegan or vegetarian or fruitarian or keto or South Beach diet, cabbage diet, fasting. I don't care. It's not for me to tell you what to do. My only question to people is it working? So I go through the diet with them. We write it all down. I might say, Tariq, give me a day in the life of you. Let's start at the beginning. Let's start at breakfast. Take me all the way to bedtime.
Okay.
And so the person describes what they do, and sometimes they start in the middle. That's when I know there's some stress there. Or sometimes they go, well, normally I do this, but sometimes I do that. I'm like, just give it to me straight. Just give me a day in the life of you. And they go through it, and they then I say, okay, should we agree none of that's working? And it's a big surprise. It's a big sort of sock in the face. And they're like, oh my God. Yeah, I mean, none of it's working. And none of it's working because they're either constipated or they're nauseous or they got acid reflux or they're overweight or they're underweight or what are the, whatever the symptoms they're coming with. So you can be keto, you can be paleo, you can be like Eddie, you can be, but if you've got no hydrochloric acid, no bile flow, not enough enzymes, lipase, you're going to absolutely degrade yourself, create degeneration in your body if you eat that way. So it all only ever comes back to what have you got in the pot? What have you got in the pot that works? Because it's all about your digestive function, depending on that dictates almost the diet you can eat.
Yeah, you mentioned two things though that are fascinating because I'll want a bit of definition on some of this as well. First of all, you talked about the metabolic thing, right? So everybody has a different metabolism, so they're functioning differently. But everybody has a different digestive system. So the lipase, the amylase, the digestive hydrochloric, how you're all breaking all of this down. So how do you are there huge permutations and combinations of all of this where we just throw it all up in the air because each human being is so uniquely different? Is my metabolism really, really different from the next person? And is my digestive system also really, really unique and different from any other person? And is it a combination of those things?
Yeah, it is. So most people's digestive systems are affected by, okay, we all have the same organs. We've all got the same stuff and the hormones and the liquids and the gases and the enzymes and the biles and everything. The issue with it is they can deplete. They can run out. And they run out depending on your stress or your source of stress. So some people burn down some parts of their body quicker than others, or some areas, or get defunct. Everyone's different. So we all get different symptoms most of the time. Um, and that's what it comes down to in my book. It's about the stress and what you've got to cope with. So the reason that most people have an issue with their digestive systems is because of the stress they do to themselves when they're eating. So when stress occurs in the body, you've got something called a migrating motor complex that basically just turns off. So if you and I are having lunch together at a restaurant, no phones, and someone comes in and demands everyone's bags and wallets and whatever, that's stress. That's an adrenaline cortisol surge. Your digestive system goes, hey guys, listen, we're done. We're done here. I know Tariq's got a steak in his stomach, but we gotta go and help cortisol and adrenaline. We
Mhm.
gotta go to a different zone. Digestion is always, I say, at the back of the queue in the body. So most people are living this fight and flight, cortisol, adrenaline, social media, addictive type life. They're like rabbits caught in a headlight the whole time. Should I do this? Oh no, I'll do that. Let's do that. Oh, let me start taking these. Everyone's got supplements in their cupboards. They don't finish them. Everyone's got trying something new because the longevity of the integrity of the product is non-existent. So we're constantly trying to find something better to feel better, this dopamine hit. And our digestive systems take the hit the whole time. So I find people do the fasting as an example, and they'll have done it for, they do 5-2 or they do fasting for 10 hours a day. But get them to the weekend and they're bingers, you know? So it's very difficult. So even when people say to me, oh, I'm vegan, I'm vegetarian, I'm like, do you eat cheese? And they might look at me like I'm mad. And I'm like, well, I'm asking you because I'm giving you the opportunity to let me know how strict or where your values lie in the way that you've decided to eat. So most people eat cheese at the weekend or when they go to a nice restaurant, but they're still a vegetarian. And even vegans are, maybe they'll eat an avocado or maybe they eat cheese, but the rest of the time they're vegan. So, like I said at the beginning, I don't care at all how people eat. I don't push a way of eating onto them. I just ask them the question, does it work for you? And if it doesn't, shall we agree it doesn't and make the appropriate changes so that it works? And whatever you want to call it, we can make up a name for how you're eating. That's fine. But if you create a dictation of the way that you eat, then you also prevent the whole parasympathetic parasympathetic effect of digestion to happen, because you're already limiting. This is who I am. This is how I eat. These are my boundaries. This is what I'm doing. I can't eat that. I can't eat that. I do this. I have this symptom, therefore I can't do that. I have this symptom, therefore I can't do that. And that is stress in the digestive system. And the digestive system must be parasympathetic in flow to be effective, to be absorbing, assimilating, digesting, and eliminating. And I stress people may be angry people, and angry people are constipated people, and constipated people are stressed people. And so the cycle goes round. So I hope that answers the question. It comes down to the state of the digestive system as to whether the diet works or ends up working for you.
Digestion is critical for a human being. It's absolutely, this is the fuel that we burn. This is how we nourish our organs. This determines everything. You mentioned, I didn't know about this so much. I know about the stress and the effect it can have, but the parasympathetic, parasympathetic.
Yeah, parasympathetic.
What's that all about? Like, so how
So,
do people get themselves to a good state? So I'm coming at it as an emotional coach. I see people and they got issues coming to me, but they're having 2 liters of Coca-Cola, right? Like, so I have to get them all, and they're paranoid, right? And they're worried and stuff like this, and so what is the parasympathetic system? How do they get to a place where they are able to control their digestive system? I think
sure,
I've learned this over the years with trial and error and seeing different people like yourself and homeopaths. But what would you what first of all the basic on parasympathetic, and then how to get them to a more optimum position wherever they're at.
sure. Well, you've got the autonomic nervous system, the ANS, and there are two branches. So one branch is the parasympathetic, and the other branch is the sympathetic. So sympathetic is wired, tired, stressed. People can't sit down, always on the go. And the parasympathetic branch, the PNS, is rest and digest. Now we need bits of both. Somebody comes in and steals your bag, you want to be able to react to it and not be like, no, hey, it's fine, take it. You want to be able to have that stress release and that fight and flight. You want to be able to oscillate between the two. But the digestive system, if it's in a stressed place, will not work. And that's when the MMC and the CCK and the hormones stop communicating, things stop getting released, which is why people then get SIBO, which is then why people get bloated, because the whole chain of events stopped. It's a bit like, a cart going up a roller coaster and someone turns the electricity off. And you've still got to come down and do all this, but there's no energy left. So
Okay.
if you eat and something stresses you out, you've put a stop to the digestive process. Then what can happen is that you can learn that. That can then be, a learnt response. So if you're always a stressed person, a sympathetic person, and you're always eating but thinking about other things, or on your phone, or eating too fast, or eating on the go, or answering emails, or watching TV, then you'll have impaired digestion, as
Yeah.
opposed to the person who goes, oh, I need to look after myself and heal myself and feed myself. I'll sit at a table and eat and then you leave the table and you're not bloated because you've eaten in an appropriate space, in an appropriate environment. It's about creating these environments. If you don't create the right environment, it doesn't work. If you employ someone in your company that doesn't fit in with the environment that you've created, you have a problem. You can't teach them the culture because it's just not for them. And you try and get a square peg into a round hole. And the same is true as digestion. If you try and digest food in a stressful environment, you've already lost.
This,
So, just my last point, it doesn't matter what you eat.
wow.
The food isn't the issue. The system, the person, and houses. We would rather have a bad diet and a good digestive system than a good diet and a bad digestive system.
Okay, cool. And so this is why you say, is it working for you? Is it working? So that's the
It's
basis
the
for this.
only question we need to know.
Yeah. Okay.
Not how long have you been keto? Oh, my friend did paleo, so I'm doing paleo. I feel amazing. No. What are your symptoms? Are you happy? What works? What doesn't work? Everything works. Great, fine. Go and have a lovely time.
Yeah.
But I very rarely see people who are like, everything works.
Yeah, but I mean, surely there's a limit to some of this. Okay. So, like, I'm having a great time. I'm on holiday and we're in the Mediterranean and we have lots of food and salads and stuff like that. But I
Mm,
just am loving that Greek coffee. I'm just loving it. It's just so, there's something different. And
mm,
I kind of like have a few more of them than I should probably. And
yeah.
now all of a sudden, all of a sudden I'm like, oh man, I know I have to be careful because I love the things. It sometimes seems to me the things we love as human beings are the things that sometimes can trigger us as foods.
The
So
intolerances, yes.
yeah, in total. So I'm like, okay, I'm at eight. I know I'm at five coffees. I'm like, I'm zoomed out. That's it. I'm gonna fly. I'll fly back to London or something. So there's a limit, I suppose, as well, right? In this, there's some kind of balancing.
It goes back to the stress, right? If you drink 3 coffees every day on holiday, it's probably better for you than you drinking 3 coffees in a stressful environment in London.
Hang. Okay.
One
Yeah.
is accumulating and creating abundance, and the other is draining and creating, a stress response.
So how do you feel about all of these people that constantly talk about like, okay, oh, I'm never, because you come across this a lot in the personal development field, uh, they don't have caffeine at all. They will be like they eschew it, and I feel guilty. I look at these people and you know, I do feel guilty, but I love it. So what is your view on things like coffee or stimulants and things like that?
Uh, so a lot of people come to me and they say, "Oh, you're going to tell me not to drink coffee or alcohol or chocolate, all these things." I'm like, absolutely not. That's not my job. My job is if you feel like you've got an addiction to them and you can't stop eating them or drinking them, then we need to repair your physiology to a degree that you're not craving them. If you're drinking 8 coffees a day, the coffee isn't the problem, the job's the problem. Yeah? Or the partner, the spouse is the problem, or something's the problem. It ain't the coffee.
Okay.
So we need to always go back to the etiology of the issue rather than going, well, here's some what do we use? What is it? No, it's not dandelion. It's chicory root. People try and you can't substitute coffee. It's like you can't substitute cake.
Yeah.
If you're gonna have a cake, have a big fat piece of cake from a really good place that got made with some love and some beautiful organic ingredients and some full fat cream and knock yourself out. What you don't want to do is have the low fat cake, end up eating 5 of them and then feeling guilty and shameful about it. So it's really about owning everything we do. And if we own it, then we don't create the stress. If we feel like we shouldn't be, oh, really shouldn't on a diet, oh, come on, let's live life. If we come from eating and digestion and food from a different place, and it is that love or fear, abundance, or then we're much better digesters. I've got a theory or something I sort of oscillate around my brain when I think about writing and things. And I think, there's loads of professions, and mainly guys, I have to say, males. And there's a lot of professions where guys go to work, they get up in the morning, they have a cup of tea, they have a bacon butty from the shop on the way to work, and then at lunch it's a sandwich that someone's made, a pack of crisps, maybe a chocolate bar. They're not coming in with constipation and bloating and all these issues because they're just eating the food. They're just sitting down, they're having half an hour, they're sitting down, they're eating, they're getting on with it. They're not considered whether they're keto, paleo, faster. They're just eating food. And there's not any of that stress that goes into it. The people with the digestive issues, there's this chaotic sympathetic brain. What shall I eat? Who shall I eat it with? When shall I eat it? How much shall I eat? Is it good? Is it got this? Is it got that? I mean, the questions around eating one morsel of food that we've got to in the 21st century is mental health right there and right there.
Okay, thanks.
So it's not the food, it's the system it goes into, and it's also the emotional status of the person that makes digestion good. If I'm happy, if I'm good, if I'm living life, if I'm being successful and being fulfilled, then I can eat anything and not be bloated.
But here's the deal. If I am stressed and I eat a really lovely, mild, organic salad and I relax myself and I take time and I have that meal and I meditate and I chill and do everything, right? Okay, or I'm going through all of that hell at work and all those hassles and all these, and I'm having a Big Mac. And I had a McDonald's breakfast as well, right? And then I'm having McDonald's in the afternoon. And in the evening, I'm going to another chain and I'm going to just eat something. Then there's something there as well, right? Like if I understand myself better and I'm going through this, I know to avoid one to t'other because in the other way, I'm managing my health. I'm managing
Yeah.
how I feel and what I'm going through. Does that make sense? Because what I'm
Yeah.
trying to address here is all of the shit out there
Yeah.
that these companies, frankly, are feeding us because of food science that makes money. It makes money, and I'm not really a conspiracy theorist, not really, but at the same time, uh, I know that if people are eating if they're drinking tons of Coca-Cola, if they're eating a lot of junk food, if they have a lot of TV dinners or these pre-packaged prepared supermarket dinners, and that's all they're living on, I know that their deficiencies are are holding them back in their mindset. I'm all about the mindset. So now for me, the mindset, and folks, please see your physician, speak to your
Mm,
GP before you make any changes.
yeah.
But I'm not coming from a medical or healthcare background, but I am coming from a psychological mindset background. So my thing is, well, could you not just do that for a little while and see how you feel? Can you not have so much Coca-Cola, or can you try and vary your food so it's not just going to KFCs and McDonald's every day? That would be the kind of or and vary it up a little bit. So
Yeah.
that's my approach. That's kind of how that's the only thing I can think of from that space. Um,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there is no doubt that eating better and looking after yourself makes you feel better. There is no doubt on that for sure. Um, but there's also places where eating better doesn't make any difference to certain types of disease sets in places. As for example, you can be depressed. So we know depression is not having dealt depression is more about having repressed emotions, not being heard, not talking about stuff, never dealing with stuff. And that can often manifest in anger and addiction and liver and alcoholism. This isn't general. I'm not trying to be generalized, and but there are certain pathways. So you could give that person a really wonderful diet and the best organic supplements and a personal trainer and a massage therapist. But if you don't do any visceral manipulation on the ligaments and the trigger points of the liver, and if you don't go into repressed emotions, you're not going to heal that person with organic whole foods food, with brown rice, chicken, and broccoli. You're not going to change their life. You need to get to the etiology. So
what does etiology mean?
the root cause.
Okay, so on cause analysis, I'm coming at this from an emotional perspective. I'm coming at it from a psychological mindset. Why do they have that anger? What is the issue? Can we get that out of them? What was the trauma? What were the underlying things that have caused these problems that they
Hmm.
feel? Why do they not feel? So emotions and stuff, they can come to you with anger, fear, worry, anxiety, panic attacks, things like that. So to a degree, there's things that you can do in the food kingdom and
Yeah.
nutrition system, but there's also this underlying thing that from a mind perspective, a mind emotional perspective that they have to look at and deal with. And for me, that's a critical part of what I'm doing. I want to just touch a little bit on something you said quite early on. You talked about something which hit a nerve. You said they've got all these supplements in their cabinet, and you hardly ever finish them. And so I want to talk about nutritional supplements a little bit. And there's a lot going on at the moment out there. I don't know if you've been keeping track on some of this longevity space, but especially the American stuff where we gotta live forever, man. All of this kind of stuff. So it's like, oh, NMN, nicotinamide, it's resveratrol, all that concentrated good stuff from red wine, all of these. Oh, metformin, they're pushing metformin now to increase the I don't know what, the T something in the human body, there's a telomere. And then rapamycin, the last one, which just sounds scary, but yeah,
Yeah, I mean, the supplement space is over subscribed, and I've been in it. I've been in it in developmentation, in consultation, and looking what people do. There
okay,
are only very few supplement companies I use,
okay.
and companies I use, and I probably get on average one a week, two a week companies asking me to trial their product. And the first question I ask them is, where's it from? And is it organic? And if they can't answer those two questions, I'm just not going to waste your time. Don't send me any. Please don't send me anything.
Where's it from
Yeah.
and is it organic?
Because it's just, excuse my language, shit.
Okay.
It's profit. And it's not a supplement company. It's a business deal. It's profit. They're B2B. They don't know anything about the wellness space. It's all about money. So a lot of supplements are all white labeled from really cheap manufacturers, and it's the marketing. Look at Prime. Look at, um, look at Prime energy drinks.
Mhm.
It's an insanely bad product,
Mhm.
and it's everywhere, and it's probably made the fastest revenue turnover more than any other product of energy drinks in the world. And that's all about its marketing campaign. So, I use companies like the Naked Pharmacy because they're sourced in Europe. They're organic. Some of the products are in there organic, developed by a pharmacologist. Integrity is high, and I see results from them.
Okay.
A lot of people, one of my questions is how, if you could only take one bottle of supplements away with you, what would you take? Some people are like, oh, easy, this. And some people are like, hmm, good question. Uh, well, I suppose. And that's because none of them are working. They can't tell the difference. So you can take a supplement to repair something and you will often not feel the difference, right?
Yep. Yep. Yep.
And also you have to be out of ease to be able to use something that you're deficient in, again, to notice the difference. And the RDAs and the values and the dosages sometimes just don't hit the sides. So that's why people are, you know, if I tell you to take one, then you could take one forever, not feel any difference.
Yeah.
So again, we say the poison is in the dosage.
Wow.
And the poison is in the dosage, but the poison is in the in the company that's selling you the product. And again, does it work? No. Well, let's stop taking it, shall we?
So we've got a lot of brands out there who shall remain nameless, but they're franchised in the UK and US, and you see them, and without saying their names, they've got their own branded versions of vitamin B, C, D, and the rest of the alphabet. You'd normally just go straight to something like the Naked Pharmacy because you're comfortable with its organic credentials and its nutritional levels. And as a nutritionist, you understand. better how much more of an amount they would need of that specific thing for their specific issue. And that's not necessarily something that the layperson would know or understand, right? Like, so I finally got to afford to get to, I think it's the brand is Solgar. So
Mm,
I bought Solgar, and I just think it's better than the ones because in the brand name versions from the shops or Sainsbury's own brand, because it's more expensive. I'm paying more money. They say that
yeah.
GMO, it looks expensive. They've got a lovely seal on it, right? Okay.
Mm,
I'm opening this seal, but I don't really know. And I have to say, I fall into this category of people that will, like, you read all this nutritional stuff as a layperson, you think, okay, well, I've got to have vitamin C because I need to replenish it. Well, Solgar seems the best I can buy at the amount of money I have. And then I need to have vitamin B12, cyanocobalamin. It gives me energy. Now I'm speaking as a layman completely.
mm,
And I've been told that synergistically the two go together. And I've also
mm,
been told my blood test, especially because I'm from an Asian background, that vitamin D is important for me because of the lack of sun that I get compared to traditionally from my
mm,
heritage. And so I'm now taking vitamin B, C, and D. I
mm,
don't know what to do with E. I don't know what to do with chromium or magnesium. I'm
mm,
told, hey, yes, sleep at night better if you'll have a
yeah.
spoonful of Oradix or whatever. I love your question. I'm going to answer it for me. If there was one thing I could
Yeah.
take, I would take my favorite green drink, which shall remain nameless. But I feel as if when I have my favorite green drink, well, it won't remain nameless. I tried a couple, but the one I've gone for now, which I found in Dubai from the US, is Vibrant Health, and that
Mm,
seems to have a range of good stuff in it. It's non-GMO. It's relatively expensive, and it has sachets as well, which I can have when I'm
yeah.
when I'm traveling. So then at least that would, and it's interesting because it's the closest thing that's convenient, but to food
Yep.
that I'm having. But in terms of all the other supplementation, I couldn't, after all these years, I couldn't really say. And perhaps that's because they're not good quality, or perhaps it's because the dosage for whatever I'm experiencing or going through isn't what I would need. And unless you're qualified in the field, you wouldn't know that, right?
Yeah, and it is a minefield, and so the RDA out there, is the recommended daily allowance. But lots of different conditions, you can use different amounts and different periods of time. The ranges are in many senses arbitrary. So yeah, I mean, you've still got to be really careful with supplementation and herbs and all the natural stuff because it's just as potent, if not in some cases more potent than medicine. And there are lots of contraindications. And in the absence of vitamin C, the iron isn't uptaken, or in the absence of hydrochloric acid, where's your zinc and B6? So there are lots of things that you need. Again, it's just the same in anything. I can't employ this person unless I've got an office. So I can't if I haven't got any magnesium going through the body or B6, and lots of things just don't happen. So that's why a varied diet is really essential. Organic food is essential. Eating seasonally is essential. We are seasonal beings. We need different parameters of different uh, hormones are different when it's hot to when it's cold. Our thyroid performs differently when it's hot, when it's cold. Cortisol, fat stores, glycogen levels, just like animals, you know? We don't eat lamb all year round. We don't eat, we don't get cheeses all year round if you eat seasonally. So that's how you would get everything you needed if you ate seasonally. Because we don't eat seasonally, we need the supplementation more than ever.
Okay. Okay. Um, yeah, nutrition's it's a fascinating field. What about the two, three new things that have come on the block with that? Now we've talked about dosage on the more traditional set of supplements. What's your view on Well, NMN and I think Revestrol, I think your questions about where it's from and is it organic, they're kind of like are helping me now because if it's a very synthetic NMN product, it doesn't seem to make sense to me. And then the last bit is Stamet 7. So Paul Stamet's the whole mushroom thing, right? Like it's
Mm.
exploded. Everybody's into reishi and chaga and lion's mane for cognitive function and cordyceps, which I don't know. I take cordyceps and I feel a sense of well-being for some reason. But we have all these mushroom supplements now. We have all these new things coming out now. I mean, there again, I've also looked at, I think I've been applying some of your principles. Is it organic? Where is it from? Are there some stores you like better than others? There are a few places I find that are quite good. I like Clear Spring. I think anything that because they stick very much to food and mostly to macro-based foods. Then there's another place called Organic something in Chelsea. But then there's also the new one in America, the Whole Foods, right? Like, so the Whole Foods, right? And so then they're just supplying everything. And now you've got a range of prices, you've got a range of sources that you're looking through. When you, as a professional, integrative medicine nutritional specialist, look at this, what's going through your head that, oh boy, do people know this or that when they see this? Okay, because that would be the question I'd ask you.
So yeah, I mean, we've been using mushrooms for years, and the world's been using mushrooms for tens of different decades. You know, there are hospitals that use mushrooms in oncology, you know, as the sole source of healing. So
Okay.
I mean, I've got organic chaga mushrooms on my desk, you know, and this is a company called Wellness Store, and I'm, you know, trialing some of them out, but they're organic. Bang, I'm gonna have them. Um, the the biggest thing about all mushrooms, whether it's lion's mane, reishi, chaga, is their antioxidant effect in their support of the immune system. And that's why they're so good at supporting the liver and then for any kind of set of disease that comes from the immune system in the liver, i.e., cancer, because they're immune boosters. Um, so I you could turn to mushrooms and decide not to take any multivit. I mean, the multivit in my mind is quite an old-fashioned thing. You know, I get most women taking a B complex, taking all their Bs, because if you've done the work, you should be getting your food seasonally, and therefore your multivit is a waste of time. Then you have to spot the deficiencies that people may have. And they may be, you know, it's like the law of thirds. So I have to find three things that would point me in the direction that might say you're zinc deficient. Are there white spots on your nails? Have you got any digestive issues? So then I might do a zinc test. You know, we might do a zinc test to establish your zinc levels before we start taking zinc. If I want to support the immune system, I'd probably go straight to a mushroom complex because it's all encapsulating. So there are lots of signs and symptoms that tell me you're deficient. But then and so and so then that's when I would suggest something. But I am much more likely to use a supplement that is the food sourced as opposed to a lab sourced. So if I need vitamin A, I use a liver supplement because cow's liver, beef liver, chicken liver is very high in vitamin A. So I go straight to the source of the vitamin A, liver.
Yep, love it.
If
Okay.
if I need vitamin C, I get people to eat oranges. I get trolled on Instagram for getting people to eat oranges. It's my favorite. It's almost one of my new favorite things to do to create a bit of chaos. Start talking about oranges. There's always someone, they're full of sugar.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm
So,
like, oh, tell me something else. Tell me something interesting.
so if you had a huge bowl of varied, say 10 or 12 fresh fruits or vegetables,
Mm.
and if you had it at say about at some point during the day, and in the afternoon at some point you had a huge superfood salad with tons and tons of stuff. Could you say that you knock out a lot of potential deficiencies that a person might have? So if you had, so following the 80-20 rule, 80% of my clients come with these sets of deficiencies.
Yeah.
Or, well, so how do I eat better so that I'm less deficient? I think as a general rule, I get the law of thirds. I still get the fact that you need to be quite analytical and you go through this process in order to
Yeah.
determine the individual things. But as
Mm.
an overall kind of health enhancing approach to food, is that
Well,
possible
yeah, good
in an
question. I
area?
mean, I am a big fruit person, so I'm like, let's get the fruit in first and foremost. Oranges first thing in the morning. Support your vitamin C and your adrenals. We don't store vitamin C. And the only place we do store them is in our adrenals, which gives out our cortisol, our stress hormone, and our muscles. So let's get, I squeeze an orange every morning for breakfast. Squeeze it, drink it, ignited. Uh, so oranges are the easiest way for me to pick people's energy up. I love watermelons and melons because they're hydrating, and a lot of people are dehydrated. So, we're not talking about sitting there and eating a whole bowl. You can eat four squares of melon and suddenly feel, again, ignited, rejuvenated. Um, I think the vegetables are slightly harder sometimes. So there's a lot of things I see with the overground veg causing digestive issues than the underground veg. So the underground veg have no a less fertilized, pesticided, and they're untouched because they're roots, they're in the ground. The overground veg have got all these protective mechanisms all the time.
Hmm.
So they can be often harder to break down and absorb.
So let,
So
yeah, okay. So
um but potatoes, I'm a bit different. I try and get people eating potatoes. We've been scared of potatoes for years. Bananas. Again, if I had a pound for everyone who said to me, "Oh, I'm trying not to eat bananas. I'm trying not to eat potatoes." I'm like, "Why? What's the potato ever done to you?" "Oh, well, I think I've been putting on a bit of weight." I'm like, "Trust me, the potato is your least problematic problem for putting on weight." So, you know, we need to come back to the basics. We need to just get back to these basics and get satisfied and get fulfilled. And that comes from eating, in my book, potatoes for sure, but fruit.
yeah.
Yeah.
You've explained that to me quite well. I get fruits, I get vegetables. I understand about the roots and the overground and the underground, the root elements and how they're different and how they have different effects on people. And I know
Mm.
that there's this defensive thing with the overground thing, and a lot of people kind of pick on that a bit, and they're like, oh, and so
Yeah.
therefore, it's you think it's that good,
Yeah.
and therefore let me now eat 15 steaks a day, that kind of thing. But then the other thing in all of this is like we cook at home, and everybody cooks, and in my heritage, we have a specific issue, I believe, which I picked up on, and that's the seed oils. And so there's a lot of obesity, especially the pot belly,
Yeah.
especially in South Asian culture. And I think that has a lot to do, from what we understand, is a lot of the seed oils that we've been consuming. It has to do with the sunflower oil and the
Yeah.
vegetable oil. And my worst one, the I call it the exterminator extended vegetable oil because it just
Yes. Yes.
doesn't look right, man. And then they push this pomace on you, this kind of like you think it's virgin oil and it's kind of
Mm.
cheaper, but it's full of canola from American audience, but rapeseed oil, right? So it's like, so then I'm like, so I've been going through a push to try and because my mom's got to fry her samosas, there's no way she's not gonna fry samosas so my thing is okay. I finally found two things which I think, or two or three things which I think at different heating points
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
So coconut, not so much, avocado, not so much, extra virgin olive oil to a degree you can take it. And please correct me if I'm wrong in it.
Mm-mm.
And then on the last bit, which I found on Clear Spring, again, I really do. appreciate how much of they've done because I know a lot of the background of the founders at Clear Spring. They've got an organic sunflower oil, and it's not
Mm,
cheap, but it's the one that I've pushed the family
mm,
towards. They think if you're
yeah,
gonna do this, then start using this.
yeah,
And then for the cake baking, it's like if you're gonna do this, and correct me, I'm like, okay, well, just use brown sugar or use a better quality flour or something like that, or use less sugar, but make
mm,
that decadent chocolate cake, but use less of it. Am I
yeah.
moving generally in terms of food sources and cooking in the right direction for the home?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely you are. It's definitely about the quality, the sourcing. Food is about the source. Where has it come from? So yes, organic as much as you can. Fats at solid state, room temperature for cooking, and liquids for cold stuff. That's kind of tends to be the rule. Um, so yeah, no, definitely in the right arena. I mean, we've gone. I see now people eating too much fat. I see fat laden diets, and they're like, but it's good fat. I'm like, it's still too much fat. Come on. You know, you're stressed, you've got your liver function screwed, you've got no bile flowing, and you're eating all this fat. So, yes, fat is good, but you know, we can eat too much of it. So we got to make sure that the quality is the most important thing, and it looks like you've got that right.
So in those situations, for those people where they're coming to you with these kinds of things, what kinds of, is it excessive amounts of that fat that's the issue more so? Is it that like, is it like, or is it that it's the wrong kind of fats?
It's a combination of both really. I mean, there are lots of signs and symptoms you see from people eating too much fat, and some eat good fat and some eat bad fat. You know, if you have a food diary of someone that's eating takeaway a lot, then that's trans fats, processed fats for sure. Uh, but the symptoms can be the same.
Cool. Thank you. Have you heard of the glucose goddess?
I have, yes, I saw something that she was interviewed. But you know, I mean, I'm not going to go down that line of talking about sugar because I don't revere it. I think, you know, it's like anything. People are constantly telling us stuff's bad. The brain runs on glucose enough already. You
Okay.
know, trying to do these sugar-free diets. Everything, sugar isn't the problem most of the time. You know, sure, I'm talking about cane sugar. I'm talking about sugar from fruit. I'm talking about yeah, we're going to talk about white sugar for sure. 100%. But it's a bad message. It's a bad languaged sentence that sugar is bad for us because not all sugar is the same.
And the confusing part in this
And
is
then it gets confusing, and then people are brought up with the wrong, incorrect knowledge. And then you get people trying to get rid of sugar out of their entire lives and causing 101 other problems. If you
okay.
decide to reduct,
Yeah.
you know, these reductionist views, you've tried to take it back to oh, everyone's problem is sugar, then you've just got a massive chaotic issue on your hand of okay, well, where do you get your energy from? And
You know,
so people trying to take away food groups
yeah.
again, it's grabbing at straws.
I think this is true. I think also though with big families and stuff, you see kids constantly reaching into the cookie jar. You could see them
Yeah.
constantly. You see this, you observe this kind of behavior where all these foods have been weaponized with sugar and the kids are into it. And they'll go for the yogurt pot that's got the most sugar, or they'll go for Oreos or for Maryland cookies, which are horribly full of preservatives and God knows what, a whole bunch of synthetic stuff, relatively synthetic. Isn't it a good idea to try and move them more towards natural sugar sources in
Oh,
the
obviously, yeah. Obviously, that's why, you know, the fruit. If you have an orange in the morning, you're not craving stuff in the afternoon. Um, yeah, all the time. I mean, there's nothing good in a cookie. I mean, it's just not food. I
but
mean, of course,
where do we
sometimes
find
you have
ourselves
a
in?
yeah, sometimes you treat yourself. So what? That's fine, you know? Someone's birthday, have a cake. But in terms of buying biscuits from the supermarket,
Mhm.
it's just a death trap.
Okay,
There's nothing in there for you.
I like it. It's great.
I mean,
I,
if somebody gave me a chocolate coated ginger biscuit, then I would have it for sure. I'm not going to be like, oh, what's in it? I'll have it because it's a one-off and it's something fun. And maybe you want it, maybe you don't. But I always say there are people who can have biscuits in a tin and not touch them. And there are people that then can't have biscuits in a tin because they just eat them all. And if you're the latter, you've got an adrenal stress problem. And that's the issue. Again, it's not got can't blame the Percy pig or the biscuit, the ginger snap, the custard cream. They're having a nice time over here, just having, being eaten when in a nice orderly fashion. If you're shoving custard creams down your neck, you've got an underlying energy issue. That's what needs to be addressed.
yeah, so much of this is about a holistic approach and how things loop into each other, whether it's the mind, the body, the food,
Yeah.
everything
It,
consumed.
it, it's the it's the why. It really comes down to you can't blame the biscuit. You got to blame why you want to eat the whole packet, why you can't stop at one. That's what we're dealing with. And that's why nutrition, with my clients, I say, people are always surprised how almost little we deal with food because we're doing the emotional stuff, or, it goes into, I'm no psychologist, but food therapy and personal therapy is quite a big part of the way I work with clients with the gut and the brain because I can't take on a client without talking about what's going on up here. If I just do this, then I'm going, I don't think the brain axis exists. If I refuse to talk about this, I say, no, the gut is a single entity, which it isn't. So you have to do the both to fix SIBO, parasites, IBS, IBD. IBD is a bit different, but you see, it's the whole thing.
Okay.
And it's rarely the food, it's his system that the food houses.
Okay, cool. Well, I've got a, this is really, I think, the stuff I wanted to cover, and I wanted to do it in a kind of relaxed conversational
Yeah.
tone. I wanted to really focus on the overall holistic piece.
Mm.
I will say, having read the book, okay, twice now, and mind
Mm.
mapping it at the moment, and I will give you my mind map once it's finished. And that's a prompt to make me do it then, right?
Wow.
Okay, so on this bit, the next few pieces for me, hopefully at some later point, will be because I really love in the book how you broke down all the organs
Mm.
inside the body. You talked about the skin, the liver, the
Mm.
gallbladder, and all the rest of it. And so for me, I think there's potentially deeper dives that I'd like
Mm.
to investigate in some of these. Uh, one, because it's not obvious, and the skin is one, it's not obvious.
Mm.
And then there's others that people don't even realize exists. No one goes around talking about their pancreas. Not really. No one really goes around talking about their kidneys, right? There's a conversation to be had about
Sure.
about those things. So
Yeah, definitely.
yeah, so for me, I think those kinds of things are interesting, and worth exploring if you're up for it at some point.
Yeah,
Uh,
definitely.
so is
Yeah.
this, right?
Yeah.
The Diary of a CEO. I don't know if you've ever seen that,
Ah,
but
yeah, 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 yeah.
okay. So if you're up for it, I just thought we'd do a card each. If you're
Okay.
okay, cool. Okay, so this is level two, which means you have to open up to open up. I don't know what that means, but okay, here we go. Okay. Oh, wow. And as I said, it is deep. Is there a time in your childhood when you could look back and think, this is the reason why I'm sitting here and why?
I guess the reason I love doing what I do and the reason I'm my own boss and the reason that I've always sort of been a potential solo player is I remember training. It was probably one of the hardest things I did to get to the English schools national championships. And my dad had gone when he was 14, and my sister had gone. And I was like, I'm not going. Like, I'm not going. So I just remember the dedication I put into training. And I had to do the heptathlon because I wasn't quick enough at a single at the hurdles. I wasn't going to qualify. So I had to do 8 events, and some of them I wasn't as good as others in. So I guess it was the dedication I put in to doing that at a young age, knowing at that age that the only way to get there was me. And I have got goosebumps telling you the story, which means that it's very true. And I guess that moment and that dedication has followed me my whole life.
That's wonderful. What is one aspect or feature of your life that causes you the most friction and or discomfort, and how could you change or fix it? Oh, that's a really heavy one. I would
Yeah.
I would, but that's an easy one for me at the moment. I think I'm one of these people I'm a very curious individual, and I have a lot of interests. I have a lot of fascinations, and I have some unfounded belief in delusion that I'm able to do everything. And the reality is focus, Tariq, focus, and that will lead to multiple opportunities for different things. That would be the one aspect that creates friction for me.
Yeah, well, the stakes are high for you, you know. It's a good issue to have.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you so much for this.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Oh,